There's news in the NFL today, and it's time to break it down in the only way we know how. Hot Route style, with our spin on football headlines with a mix of frozen tundras, neck rolls, and grass-stained jersey.
Hello and welcome back to Hot Routes. Jace, this is the second episode we've had that intro. I just get hyped listening to it. It's so much better than what it was before when I was just starting it off saying, hey. So that just sets us off on the right tone. But I'm really excited for today. We have Jace Frederick of the Pioneer Press. Pretty much covers everything over there, mainly Timberwolves, high schools, but always is getting in on the Vikings when it starts to matter, when it gets really important. And we're starting to get to that point of the season now. After this win, they're back in the playoff race. And so wanted to have you on. How are you doing today?
Hey, Paul, pretty good. Yeah, that intro is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm more fired up than I thought I'd be. I think it was the flames.
Yeah.
That lit the fire. It ignited this episode.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Flames, Manny Hill, like you can't really go wrong when you have that combo.
It's elite. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I'm hoping this will be a flaming episode. And the reason I wanted to have you on this week specifically is to talk a little bit about Mac Jones, because he had arguably his best start of the year. That was the game that we as Vikings in the Twin Cities, that was the game we got. So I think a lot of fans probably tuned into that early game to see Mac Jones play really, really well against the Cleveland Browns. And you were banging this drum when the draft was happening of the Vikings should take Mac Jones. It'd be a mistake not to take Mac Jones if they're staying put, if he's there. When they pick, they didn't. They trade up, or they trade back. They take Christian Darrisaw, and Patriots look like they have their quarterback of the future. So I just want to unleash you and chat about Mac Jones. But is not drafting Mac Jones right now for the Minnesota Vikings, is it like getting to a disastrous point that they didn't do that?
I think so. I think it's hard to look at it as otherwise. Yeah, just a little bit of background on that. Like, a couple of friends and I started doing a fantasy football podcast in spring. And so we started, and we actually first time I've ever watched film on college players as we headed into the draft, just the skill position guys, quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers. And Mac Jones, I liked him in college because, he was putting up these prolific numbers, but I was probably in the same camp as everybody else. Yeah, he just has really good weapons, and Alabama has a great offense, and it is what it is. But then when I watched full games, all the throws, all those types of things, it was okay, his pocket presence is really good. He can put zip on the ball when he has to. He zips it into some tight windows. He gives Devonta Smith is great. Jalen Waddle is great. He gave them opportunities to be great, putting the ball in great spots. He was phenomenal, and you could see the anticipation was there. The way he's able to read defenses, it was all great. It was no quarterback is a slam dunk. No prospect coming out of college is a slam dunk. We've seen that enough times now, but Mac Jones had all the tools. It was I think he's going to be really good. And when you're in a position where, as a team, I think every team that doesn't have a franchise, this guy can win us the Super Bowl quarterback, should always be looking. And especially when you're drafting in the middle of the round and a guy who could be that guy, who has the tools to be that guy. Again, there's no guarantees, but falls to you at 14, you have to pull the trigger. Because I think we can all agree at this point, Kirk Cousins, he played really well against the Chargers. He had a good week. They were aggressive. He was aggressive, made plays down the field, gave Justin Jefferson chances. It's not the norm. It won't be the norm. It is what it is. It's good one week, bad the next. That's kind of the way life has been for Kirk Cousins and the Vikings offense since Kirk's been here.
Yeah.
Not a long-term solution. And Mac Jones looks like one again and again. Mac Jones has had 2 top 5 PFF weeks with the Cowboys and the Browns. He rises to the occasion. He played well in that Sunday night game against Tampa. It looks and he's throwing the ball to Jacoby Myers, Nelson Aguilar. I mean, Kendrick Bourne. Imagine if he's throwing the ball to Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. And New England's rebuild was 1 year, and they went from a 7-win team to Cam Newton to where they already have 6 with Mac Jones with 7 games to play. You could talk about teams getting lucky. Green Bay got lucky. They went from Favre to Aaron Rodgers. New England might get lucky going from Tom Brady to Mac Jones. Well, the Vikings could have got lucky sitting in the middle of the first round with an elite prospect falling to them. And they basically stared fortune in the face and said, not this time, thanks.
Yeah, and we saw in the draft, the reports came out after, they tried to trade up for Justin Fields. So it wasn't as if they were committed to Kirk this wasn't, we're not drafting anyone. We're not seriously considering it. We found out they wanted Justin Fields. They wanted to go up to get him. And not only would they not have had to go up to get him, they could have just sat where they were and drafted Mac Jones. And so I don't think the argument of, oh, well, they were satisfied with Kirk. They feel good there. They like that was proven not to be true. So then they were comfortable passing on Mac where they were and falling back, knowing that the Patriots would probably take them. They were comfortable with that scenario. So I think it is kind of a disaster that they didn't take one. I think Kirk has played well, and he's putting you in the spot that he's always putting you, where you can argue for and against him either way. And it's just the same cycle over and over and over again. And it feels like Mac Jones would have presented the opportunity to finally have a vision for 4, 5, 6 years down the line, instead of what are we going to do immediately for the next 1 year, for the next 2 years, because that's what the Vikings keep pushing themselves down the road. Well, we'll just do Cousins for another year. And suddenly that's turning into a lot of years, and we don't know when that's going to end. So I definitely do think maybe it's not a disaster, but it's not looking good at this point, 10 weeks into the season. And I want to kind of continue with the rookie quarterbacks a little bit, because the way Mac's playing, I think it garners a little bit of a reflection of how they were all drafted, what order they were drafted in, and whether you think it would look different now. So I'm going to ask you, the 5 quarterbacks that went in order, how they went were Lawrence, Wilson, Lance, Fields, Mac Jones. Are you changing that draft order 10 weeks into the season? If we were redrafting now, are you changing any of those spots?
This is tough, and I'm prepared to look really dumb here because it is kind of like very small sample size. I understand that. Certainly it comes down to a lot of times situation that you go in. But I think I would go with Mac Jones number 1, because like we're seeing what he's done right now. He looks great. He's getting better every single week. Like we said, like you can say like the Patriots is a great situation for him. Sure, they won 7 games last year. It wasn't this great team. It was Cam Newton. Everybody's excited for Cam Newton in Carolina. They're like, oh, okay, maybe this will be a little bit of a solution for Carolina's offense. Well, he was in New England last year, and their passing offense was horrific. It looked like they had nothing there. The Patriots don't have any weapons. Like their weapons are awful, and yet their offense is kind of in a groove right now. They've won like 4 straight games. They look like a team where people are literally right now talking about, ooh, could we get a Belichick Brady Super Bowl? Because that's analysts who are watching the Patriots play, who are watching Mac Jones play, and they're like, maybe we can get the Patriots in the Super Bowl. That's where he's at as a rookie. And I think right now you look at the other guys and it's like, you hope they get to that point. You're hoping that maybe in like next year, 2 years from now, they can start playing at that level. Well, Mac Jones is there right now. Like he's good enough right now. And it's hard then to not say, I'll take what is versus what could be. Yeah, I would take Mac Jones because he's already good enough to have justified it. So I will put him at number 1. And I know you're surprised, like we talked about the Fields at Minnesota wanting to trade up for him and then sitting and passing on Mac Jones. Like I'm stunned Rick Spielman missed a quarterback evaluation. I really am. This has got to be a first. Number 2, and it's the guy we've seen the least of, but I'm still just super intrigued by Trey Lance, his arm strength and what he can do mobily. Like even in his one start, it wasn't great against the Cardinals. Certainly they lost that game and Lance was a little bit up and down, but like we've seen the explosive plays and the explosive plays in the passing game, along with like the mobility. I think when he gets an offense designed around him, I think when it's like, okay, Trey Lance is our quarterback. Here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to maximize him. I still really like Trey Lance. That was why I like the number 3 thing with San Francisco. I was like, I kind of like both dudes. I don't really care who they end up with here because I think neither is a miss. Like I think long-term, I really like Trey Lance. And I think we all knew like he hadn't played football in like 2 years. He played 1 game with the COVID season and North Dakota State not playing in it. So that makes sense to me. Number 3, Trevor Lawrence. Like, yeah, he's not in a great spot, but I don't think he's looked very good either. It's still tough to look past like all the tools, the things that made him the number 1 overall pick. And certainly like Urban Meyer's done this guy no favors, but certainly isn't rising above anything. And I still think he can and probably will have a decent career, but he hasn't looked as good as I think a lot of us thought he would look here in year 1. Number 4, I'm going with Justin Fields. I would have been number 5, but he has shown more flashes. That Pittsburgh second half was really good. He let it loose a little bit more. Still has seen some of the concerns I had for him probably pre-draft. Pocket presence was bad. And the field vision wasn't great at Ohio State. But he has all those tools, and you kind of see it flash through. You see that run he had against San Francisco. It's like, that's special. So I think as the years come along, as he grows, he can be pretty successful. And Zach Wilson, I still love Zach Wilson. I think I actually, full disclosure, liked every quarterback out of these top 5. That's why the Vikings passing on the chance to get one of them at their current draft spot just baffled me. Zach Wilson's got a great arm. I think that Jets offense is really bad. He's one of those guys where like the draft spot is really terrible. Probably the worst situation out of all of them, and that might hinder him his whole career. Off to a rough start for sure, and I don't know how much better it's going to get in the situation that he's in.
I was expecting you to vault Mac Jones up your list. I don't think I was ready for number one. So
I think like, what are we seeing right now? Like Mac Jones looks like a middle tier quarterback right now. Just a few games in with a team that was with an offense that was really bad last year. So I
thought I was going to be surprising putting Mac Jones 2. So I had Lawrence 1 still. I think I differ a little bit from you. I haven't been too upset what I've seen so far. This last week against the Colts, it wasn't great, but I mean, he's gotten no favors there. And I think you have to take in consideration just what he did in college and everything that he presents, but beyond the physical tools, just we've seen him be successful. And I feel like he might have better players than the Jets, but in terms of just getting thrown into your first season with all the distractions that have come across in Jacksonville, I think it's hard to do much better than what he's shown. So I'd put Lawrence 1, Mac Jones 2, Fields 3, and then Lance and Wilson kind of 4 or 5 in whatever order you want to play. I don't think either of those guys have gotten enough run for you to really make an assessment. And yeah, I think anyone would get kind of destroyed by that Jets offensive line the way it stands right now. So I don't fault that on Zach Wilson, but also Mike White came in for a couple weeks and looked better than Zach Wilson did at any point.
For 1 week. The Buffalo week was not good, as we saw.
Yeah. Not great overall. Let's transition a little bit. Vikings, big week this week against the Packers, coming to town on Sunday. And I just want to ask a couple Aaron Rodgers questions. This one, I was talking with my roommates, and they're all diehard Vikings fans, and they hate Aaron Rodgers, like to the core. And I don't think the vaccine stuff for a lot of people helped either. I think that was maybe just throwing salt on the wound. And so it got me thinking, like, where does Rodgers rank in terms of just any Minnesota sports opponent in terms of hatred, like across all the different sports teams? Like, is Rodgers the most hated out of all of them, current or past?
I have to be honest. I had to go like 1990s on, with like our age group. I just can't. Sure. I don't know if somebody was really desperately hated in the 1970s. Yep. You know, like was Dick Butkus really hated by Vikings fans? Maybe. I don't know. You know, like, so this was a little bit tough there. But I was just going through the list, and like I came up with some names, and a lot of them were like guys who have scorned the past teams, like they'd played here, and then you grew to not like them, like, you know, Jimmy Butler, Stephon Marbury, guys who like wanted their way out. You had Chuck Knobloch, who then goes and plays for the Yankees, like those types of names. I thought of like guys like Alex Rodriguez, who just was never liked here, and now of course part Timberwolves owner. Drew Pearson with the push off, like again, that's an older one. I don't know if people held that against him forever, if they booed him for the rest of his career. I don't know. But it just seems like one play, like I don't know if that sparked a hatred. Todd Bertuzzi, I know for the Wild, like they didn't like him with that Canucks and kind of the few of the battles they had. But in my mind, I was like, I don't think any of that even possibly compares to like Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre, I'm guessing. I think it really probably came down to those two, Green Bay's long-term successful quarterbacks who you go to battle against every week. And then I think about it, and Brett Favre went like 17-14 against Minnesota, and that's not that great. And meanwhile, Aaron Rodgers, counting the playoff win, is 16-9-1, 68% of his passes completed, a passer rating of 108. He's thrown 51 touchdowns against the Vikings and 7 interceptions. He has kind of this like cocky air to him when he plays that probably only frustrates you even more as Vikings fans. I think he's atop the list. I don't think it's that close.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you mentioned a lot of the names. I went to Alex Rodriguez, Derek Jeter, just in the height of those Twins-Yankees rivalries, but I don't think they didn't play enough regularly for you to feel like those are the most hated. Another guy that left the Twins, AJ Pierzynski, I don't think was very much liked by the fans when he came back, but I don't think he's consequential enough of a player to really rise to the level. This isn't a player, but Greg Williams, the D coordinator for the Saints, during the Bounty Gate. I mean, I feel like that has to rank up there in terms of just people that the Vikings fans, Minnesota fans don't like. But yeah, I think it comes down to Rodgers and Favre. And then when Favre comes and plays for you and has the success that he does, I think that takes the air out of that balloon a little bit. So yeah, I think Aaron Rodgers is kind of unequivocally the most hated, and I'm sure that'll change if he ever switched teams and pulled a Favre. I don't think that would ever happen, but if it did, it'd swap really quickly. But yeah, combined all that he's done to beat the Vikings, combined the like Anthony Barr injury with Rodgers, and then Rodgers is commenting after it, getting fans riled up, and then just what we've seen over the last year, just his arrogance in general, I think, is probably off-putting for a lot of fans that already didn't like him. So yeah, I would agree. Unequivocally, the most hated Minnesota Vikings opponent. Sticking with Aaron Rodgers and looking just to the quarterbacks of the future, both for the Vikings and the Packers. There's still 2 matchups this year, Vikings-Packers wise, but it could be the last 2 times the Vikings see Aaron Rodgers in a Packers jersey. And I was thinking, what is this matchup going to look like next year? Is Rodgers here? Is Cousins even here? And so we're going to break out a Hot Route special, which is a pie chart, and we're going to pie chart our way around who the quarterbacks for the Packers and Vikings are going to be next year. So you get 4 options. They're going to both be the same. Rodgers, Cousins stay. They're both gone. Or Rodgers stays, Cousins goes, or Cousins stays, Rodgers goes. So how did you dole this out?
I'm really glad that you gave me this ahead of time because I would not want to do the quick math like I've heard other people do on this and other Purple Insider productions because I would probably get it wrong. It's really hard to get things set 4 ways to add up to 100. Like that's hard to do.
Yep.
I basically tried to go with, okay, Aaron Rodgers coming back next year. I think it's really low. I think it kind of was like an agreement of like, hey, I'm done. This is my last year. Tweeting out that last or Instagram that last dance photo, like it really had that feel to it. I'm guessing the vaccine stuff probably didn't improve the relationship. Certainly, I think Green Bay probably has skepticism about Jordan Love, but they can also just find another option out there. Maybe it's in the draft. Maybe it's looking for a veteran option kind of as a bridge. I don't think Aaron Rodgers wants to be there anymore. If they won the Super Bowl, maybe otherwise, but I don't really think that's going to play out that way. So I went like 20% chance Aaron Rodgers is back. So here's how I did the math in my head. And then I put it as like a 75% chance that Kirk Cousins is back here because I just think that this year it's going to play out like that. I think even if it's a new regime, they'll be like, well, we'll take the 1-year Kirk Cousins bridge year, even if we draft a quarterback, whatever it might be. Like it's nice to start out with a competent quarterback so you can kind of evaluate everything else. And maybe the new regime is like, we think we can get more out of Kirk Cousins. And then if it's the former regime, if it's Mike Zimmer, Rick Spielman still, these guys are still in win now mode. Like I think they'll think Kirk Cousins gives them the best chance at that. So splitting it out, I went that both quarterbacks are the same. I put it at 15%. I think that's like pretty likely. Like if I think Kirk Cousins is back, I think Aaron Rodgers probably isn't, but 15% chance basically that it stays the same. Both are different. Then I went 20%. That was kind of like, okay, I definitely think Rodgers is gone. I don't think Kirk is. So we'll go with that one. Packers same, Vikings different. I would be really surprised if that was the case. I put it at 5%. And then Vikings same, Packers different. Like I said, I think this is how it's going to play out, and I put it at 60%. I'd be surprised if it doesn't play out that way.
Yeah, we shockingly have close to the same. I had Vikings same, Packers different at 60%. I think
there we go.
I think just with the contract, he would have to get traded, and it would have to be, I think if the regime stays, if they play better this season, Spielman and Zimmer are pretty much tied to Kirk. Like I think if they're there, Cousins is there. And so there's still a chance that happens. As bleak as it has looked this season, they have some winnable games coming up. And so that is a realistic possibility. And then, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion, even if they do leave, that Cousins is gone, especially with the contract. And if you get someone in here, likely probably an offensive mind, and a lot of them that we've seen over the years think they can fix Kirk Cousins. It's kind of a running trend. Oh, I think we can get the best out of him, and you'd have to take on a lot of dead money, and the contract doesn't seem super inviting for other teams. You're kind of stuck in that middle ground. So I had 60% for that as well. And then chance that they're the same, I had 10%. And then also the chance that the Packers are different, or the Packers are the same, Vikings different. I also put that at 10%. I think Aaron Rodgers wants out, but I think the Packers are going to do everything they possibly can to keep him. And maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't, but I think there's still that possibility. And then both different. I think this rounds out to 100. I just had 20%. I think there is a chance that something drastic happens and Vikings clean house fully and the Packers kind of do the same. And then the division's looking weird if both those quarterbacks are gone and it's suddenly like Justin Fields, I guess. I don't know.
Depending on who the replacements are. That's what's interesting. Like if Minnesota sees that Aaron Rodgers is moving on from Green Bay, that is very tempting then to stick with Kirk, right? To try to win the division next year.
Right. Yeah. I think that would seem to be the likely scenario. And it was something that we talked about, I think, in this offseason too, if Rodgers was ever going to come back, like suddenly the Vikings are in the driver's seat. So I think that would incentivize the Vikings to keep Kirk Cousins. All right. Last question. I'm doing this all the way up till Thanksgiving. We got some funny Thanksgiving question. I love Thanksgiving. I said it on the last episode. So the last time with Sam, we went through Vikings players as stereotypical family members. So like the aunt, the nosy aunt, the uncle that falls asleep on the couch, stuff like that. This time, I kind of want to put Vikings players as Thanksgiving foods. So this is kind of weird, but like, who is the turkey? Who's the mashed potatoes? And so this is going to bring in your food opinions too, because it's going to see how you like certain foods. But I'm interested in your Vikings Thanksgiving food comps.
Okay, I did 3 of them.
Okay.
And we'll start with Kirk Cousins. He obviously was going to be on this list, and he is indeed the turkey.
Yeah.
Turkey is like, you have one bite of it, and it's like kind of, moist and delicious. Maybe that first bite, maybe it's like a nice piece of dark meat, and you're like, yeah, I like turkey. Mm-hmm. And then you go back for the next bite, and it's maybe of like a white meat, and you have it, and you're like, actually, turkey's kind of dry. I don't know if I love turkey. Like, from one bite to the next, your feelings on turkey can kind of change. There are certainly meats out there, like a braised beef or something like that, where like it can carry the meal. You're like, wow, this is really good. This can be the centerpiece. Doesn't really matter what my sides are. Like, this is just a really good meat, and I don't need too much else around it. It's going to be a successful meal. Turkey's one where it's like, yeah, turkey's not the best meat. It's not the worst meat. It's definitely not the best meat. And you certainly like, if turkey tastes good, it's probably because you poured some gravy on it. It's probably because maybe you took it with a bite of stuffing. You maybe even like dipped it in your cranberry or something just to give it a little bit of moistness, a little bit of flavor. But if those sides aren't there, you don't like the turkey's not good. So it definitely needs good sides around it. And it's not a top tier meat, but it's not bad either. Yeah. So that's why Kirk is the turkey for me. Eric Kendricks is the water. I love water.
Okay. This is not like, where I was expecting. All right.
Yeah, no. So like, this is not a bad thing. I think like water is my go-to drink, hands down. Like, I know other people might be like, oh, Thanksgiving, you have to have wine, whatever. I definitely go with the water, the necessity, the unsung hero of the meal. Like, you can't choke anything else down. Like, say you have dry turkey, whatever it might be, stuffing kind of dries the mouth out. You need water to choke it all down. Water makes the whole meal work. It completes everything. Without it, you're sitting there and you're like, I can't have another bite of this. Like, I need some water. The necessity. Justin Jefferson is the pie. I'm going with cherry pie. That's my favorite kind of pie. Okay. Just edging out like apple. I'm not a pumpkin guy. I don't know who is. It's delicious. You really like, if you had 3 slices of cherry pie, you would walk away from a meal being like, that was awesome. That was like the best meal I've ever had. But unfortunately, too often you fill up on like the dry turkey and, the stuffing, whatever it might be, the green beans. And you're like, oh, I filled up on all this other stuff, so I can't have the best part. I guess I can just have a little sliver of cherry pie. And it's not nearly as much cherry pie as you wanted or you should have had, but you filled up on all the not as good stuff. So there wasn't any room for the cherry pie. So you barely had any. And that's Justin Jefferson, with exception to last week in this offense.
Sure. Last week, they had 3 pieces of cherry pie.
They did. And it was great. And then we looked at the meal and you're like, wow, that was an awesome meal.
Yes. I also had Cousins as the turkey. And then I had like the entire offensive line as the gravy. I think if you're eating turkey without the gravy, like, it's just not going to be great. Like, if you don't have a good gravy, or if you're not dipping it in the gravy, it's going to be dry. It's not going to taste great. Again, it might have moments, but it's really, really, it's not going to be satisfying. But if you have a gravy that's pouring all over it, it's going to be nice and moist. It's going to be really good. And so if Kirk has a nice offensive line with him, it's going to be good. And so I had Kirk there, the offensive line, as the gravy on top. And then, I think you can kind of intermingle the sides however you want. My personal favorite is the potatoes, mashed potatoes, cheesy potatoes. Any way that you can get a potato, I'm going to eat it. And so to me, that's Justin Jefferson. Any way you can get him the ball, any type. If you want to even do an end around, I don't care. Whatever you want to do to get Justin Jefferson the ball, I'm going to be happy with it. And it's going to be the biggest portion on my plate is going to be the potatoes. And so it's always there. And for me, I'm going to target it a lot. I'm going to target it out of the pan. I'm going to really, really hit it hard. So that's where I had Justin Jefferson. And then, you can sprinkle the Thielen. Oh, he's a little bit of pie over here. Dalvin Cook. Maybe he's like a really good like Caesar salad or something, or the rolls, like really nice addition. Probably shouldn't be the main course, but it's a nice side to have and you like it and it elevates it. You feel a little healthy when you do it too. So I think that's where I'm going. But I love the cherry pie analogy for Justin Jefferson. I think that fits really, really well. And you can tell I'm getting really excited for Thanksgiving. So I'm very much looking forward to next week. It's one of my favorite holidays. So Jace, I appreciate you coming on with me, talking Thanksgiving, talking Mac Jones, talking Aaron Rodgers. Thanks so much.
Yeah, the Vikings literally don't have enough room for Justin Jefferson because they actually have too much ham on their plate. Amazing.
They do have a lot of CJ ham.
There's too much ham. Thanks so much for having me, Paul. Appreciate it.
All right.
This was fun.
All right. Thanks, Jace.